أجواء إيجابية إن شاء الله.
Good afternoon. You're watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, and these are the news trending today. Overnight Patriarch Shadadai urges the political factions to come together and to seriously consider the new initiative aiming at ending the presidential vacuum. Former President Michel Sleiman says the reason behind the Babda Declaration was adopted for Lebanon to have a neutralization policy rather than a dissociation policy. And the governor of Yemen's port city of Aden, Major General Jafar Mohammed Saad, is killed in a car bomb attack claimed by the Islamic State, along with 5 of his bodyguards. Lebanese Patriarch Shadadai has urged the political factions to come together and to seriously take into consideration the new initiative aiming at ending the presidential vacuum. During Sunday Mass, Rai said the country can no longer tolerate the obstruction in the work of constitutional institutions, adding that the state is facing the threat of collapse at the economic, monetary, social and security levels. Rai's comments come amid a flurry of political talks in the country that followed a meeting between Frangieh and Future Movement leader MP Saad Hariri in Paris. The meeting sparked intense speculation that the two leaders agreed to the nomination of the Marada chief for the presidency. There are, however, voices of dissent among the Kataib Party, the Lebanese forces and the Free Patriotic Movement over the nomination of Frangieh. Former President Michel Sleiman says the reason behind the Babda Declaration signed by rival factions was to prevent the Lebanese from fighting on foreign land, saying it was adopted for Lebanon to have a neutralization policy rather than a dissociation policy. Sleiman was speaking at the Congress Center in Dubai during a ceremony to announce the initiation of his party named the Republic Forum. He applauded Lebanon's military and security agencies for uncovering militant cells and battling terrorism, as well as for working to reinforce its presence all over the country. The former president called for a new electoral law that would fairly represent everyone in Lebanon, adding that he was the first president who came to power and implemented the Ta'if Accord under no tutelage, referring to the Syrian hegemony practiced during the country's military presence in Lebanon. He also expressed regret over the presidential void in Lebanon. The former Nusra Front held captives and their families have attended a welcoming ceremony at the Internal Security Forces headquarters in Beirut, days after their long-awaited release. The family of deceased soldier Ali Bazal, who was killed by the Nusra Front in December of 2014 and handed over to Lebanese authorities in April of this year, was also present at the ceremony. The extremist group also killed Mohammed Hamiyeh, whose body was handed over to Lebanese authorities on December 1st, the morning the servicemen were released. Major General Ibrahim Basbous gave a speech saluting the freed servicemen for their sacrifices made in Arsal and congratulating them on the release. He thanked everyone who contributed to the release, including Prime Minister Tamam Slam, Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri, Interior Minister Nuhad al-Mashnouk, and General Security Head Major General Abbas Brahim. Basbous also said he hoped for the return of the remaining 9 soldiers being held hostage by ISIS. An Internal Security Forces member was injured during a police chase shootout in East Lebanon as they attempted to apprehend 3 gunmen who had carried out a robbery. The National News Agency says 3 assailants in a Grand Cherokee intercepted an Audi Jeep and got out to confront 3 other men inside of it in Barlier's central Bekaa Valley, forcing them out of the vehicle and robbing them at gunpoint. A Syrian national and 2 other unidentified individuals were robbed of $5,400 as the gunman drove off in the Audi, holding a Syrian number plate as well as the Grand Cherokee. At least 32 ISIS fighters were killed in apparent U.S.-led coalition airstrikes on the group's Syrian stronghold of Raqqa province. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said the series of strikes to the north, east and southeast of Raqqa city hit ISIS bases and also injured more than 40 members of the group. On another note, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry announced that the next round of talks to address the crisis in Syria will take place in New York later this month. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad says British airstrikes on ISIS will fail to defeat the militant group. Assad's comments appeared in an interview with the Sunday Times newspaper in which he mocked Prime Minister David Cameron's strategy in the region. British lawmakers approved the bombing of ISIS targets in Syria on Wednesday. Hours after the approval, the Royal Air Force struck the oil fields that Cameron's government says are being used to fund attacks on the West. Speaking in an interview conducted before the vote in Parliament, the result of which had been widely anticipated, Assad said Cameron's strategy would make the situation worse rather than better. Assad ridiculed Cameron's assertion that there were as many as 70,000 Western-backed opposition fighters in Syria who would open a political solution to the civil war and could retake territory from jihadists weakened by the airstrikes. Cameron opposes Assad's government in Syria, where the more than 4-year-old civil war has forced millions of refugees to flee the country. And still to come in our program, France holds its first regional election since the Paris attacks. More details after the break. Welcome back. The governor of Yemen's port city of Aden, Major General Jafar Mohammed Saad, was killed in a car bomb attack claimed by the Islamic State along with 5 of his bodyguards. The automobile assault occurred in Aden's Tawahi district in the country's south. Tawahi has become a stronghold in recent months for armed groups, including Al-Qaeda, whose fighters have expanded their presence across the district. Saad was only recently appointed governor and was known to be close to President Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi, who returned to Aden last month after several months in exile in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Saad's death comes a day after the country's UN envoy held talks with Hadi in Aden, aimed at kickstarting peace talks between the pro-Hadi forces and Houthi rebels. Israel has condemned as scandalous what it deemed was a suggestion by the Swedish foreign minister that its forces had unlawfully killed Palestinians involved in a surge of street violence and warned of a diplomatic rupture with Stockholm. Addressing Swedish lawmakers on Friday, Foreign Minister Margot Wallström denounced the almost daily Palestinian knife, gun or car ramming attacks, but urged Israel to avoid overkill. Her remarks touched a nerve in Israel, whose forces have killed 102 Palestinians since October 1st. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has also warned Israel on the danger of a possible collapse of the Palestinian Authority, saying its demise would threaten the security of the Jewish state. Kerry also said without a two-state solution, Israel will be forced into an unsustainable position of perpetual occupation that would be rejected by Palestinians and the international community. But Benjamin Netanyahu insisted his country was not heading towards becoming a binational state. Moving on to Europe, a man with a knife stabbed another in an East London metro station, reportedly screaming, "This is Syria," before police used a stun gun on the attacker and detained him. Police said it was treating the incident as a terrorist attack after it was called to reports of a number of people stabbed at the Leytonstone Underground station in East London and a man threatening other people with a knife. One man was seriously injured and 2 sustained minor injuries. Britain is on its second highest alert level of severe, meaning a militant attack is considered highly likely. Londoners at Leytonstone metro station remain adamant that the knife attack at the station the night before will not prevent them from living a normal life.
Obviously, what happened yesterday was really awful, but it's one person who obviously has some wild ideas. And so I don't kind of think it's going to happen again. So there's no point in worrying about, travelling, because otherwise you'd never go anywhere.
I'm going to continue with my way of life as it is. I feel that they achieve nothing by being violent.
No, to be honest, on any type of public transport, especially when there's not really enough security or things like this. Obviously, yesterday was pretty much a security breach. Nobody knew that would have happened. Obviously, if the person had a weapon with them, that's quite a big thing. I wouldn't really feel comfortable.
The police reacted really quickly. I was on the bus, they had everything stopped, they had everything cornered off. So the reaction was really quick, and that's really good. So everyone's on alert. So I think if things are going to happen, they're going to happen, unfortunately.
France's far-right National Front is widely predicted to win control of at least one region for the first time, as the country holds regional elections 3 weeks after the deadly attacks in Paris. Both leader Marine Le Pen and her niece were expected to perform strongly in the first round of the poll as they capitalize on their anti-immigration and sometimes Islamophobic message. Ballots are cast under tight security, with France in a state of emergency after the attacks on the capital on November 13th. The socialists, who now rule France and control most regions, are set to lose most councils to either ex-President Nicolas Sarkozy's Conservatives or the Front National, despite a boost in Hollande's popularity ratings after his handling of the aftermath of the attacks. Azerbaijan was searching for 30 missing oil workers after a storm caused their offshore oil rig to catch fire. 2 people have been confirmed dead since the accident on Friday, one of whom was found early this morning. Rescue workers managed to evacuate 33 people from the rig, where they had been hanging on to lifeboats 10 meters above the stormy waters of the Caspian Sea. A source in the administration of President Ilham Aliyev said today was designated as a day of national mourning. And across the Atlantic, Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos says one of the world's most valuable shipwrecks has been found by the country's military off the coast of the city of Cartagena. The long-lost Spanish treasure galleon San Jose was carrying a large cargo of gold and precious stones when it was sunk during an attack by a British warship on June the 8th of 1708. Speaking at a press conference in Cartagena, Santos said this constitutes one of the greatest discoveries of submerged patrimony in the history of mankind, and the Colombian government will continue its investigative process of exploring and protecting submerged cultural patrimony. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a quick recap of our top stories. Maronite Patriarch Shadadai urges the political factions to come together and to seriously consider the new initiative aiming at ending the presidential vacuum. Former President Michel Sleiman says the reason behind the Baghdad Declaration was adopted for Lebanon to have a neutralization policy rather than a dissociation policy. And the governor of Yemen's port city of Aden, Major General Jafar Mohammed Saad, is killed in a car bomb attack claimed by the Islamic State, along with 5 of his bodyguards. Those are your top stories for this Sunday. I'm Linda Tamim, and I thank you all for tuning in this afternoon. Take care.
الأجواء إيجابية إن شاء الله.